1998's The Shepherd, sometimes simply known as Shepherd, has been a movie that I've been meaning to talk about for a damn long time. How long exactly? Well, this film was featured on a double feature DVD paired up with Dark Breed, which I reviewed on the channel back in April 2020. At the time when I covered Dark Breed, the idea was to do The Shepherd later that same season. And since then, every season I've done, it's gone onto my shortlist for movies to review and has ended up being cut at one point in the cycle or another. Well, this season I decided it had been on the shelf for long enough, and on reflection, I kinda wish I'd left it there. This film and Dark Breed were another Prism Leisure special, as in they were movies that had solo releases, but with the price of DVD players dropping in the early 2000s, Prism decided to try and incentivise people to pick up new players by bundling several of their licensed movies together into either 2 or 4 film multi-packs, which they'd then chuck in alongside the players themselves. Some were decent value. You'd actually get a couple of solid movies, such as The Shawshank Redemption or Shivers. But then, at the same time, those great movies would end up sharing a disc with much less favourable releases such as Witchcraft or Final Scream. It really was a totally random pairing and the quality was all over the place. The Shepherd is a Roger Corman produced picture, one of 4 films from his studio that were shot in bulk back to back in a single location. From what I understand, Corman's production company basically booked a warehouse for a couple of months, set-dressed it to look like a cheap and cheerful imitation of the ghetto areas from Blade Runner, and then shot 4 movies back to back to back to back, all in the same set space on a regimented, rotated schedule. The idea being that 2 films could be shot simultaneously in the same space as long as they didn't occupy the same parts of that set space. It's a really nifty idea with only 2 major flaws. The first being that it meant that all 4 films looked almost entirely identical visually, which isn't great, but more on that later. But because the emphasis was seemingly on getting bang for buck on the set space over, actually making the films good, when it comes to The Shepherd, well, this thing's not exactly playing with a full pack of cards, if you catch my drift. So, I'm going to level with you, this thing's a mess. There's no one cause for why this thing's so messy, instead almost every facet of its creation just seems to either fumble or totally fail to handle the situation at hand. There's a kernel of a half-decent plot buried deep, deep inside this thing, but when I tell you that I watched this while making extensive notes and had no idea what was actually going on, to the point that I actually had to re-watch it a second time and still didn't fully get what was supposed to be happening, well, I hope that helps to establish the kind of mess we're getting into this week. So the broad plot is thus. It's the far future of 2017. And the film opens with a satellite attacking another satellite, which in turn, according to the narrator, leads to a nuclear conflict that destroys most of the Earth, which also in turn causes the ecological state of the planet to swing wildly out of flow, leading to catastrophic permanent weather events that effectively make the planet inhospitable. Humanity, desperate to escape the hellscape, head underground and build large industrial ghetto cities from scrap metal. Eventually, the survivors turned to religion to try and get them through, but rather than picking any of the traditional theocracies, they instead just started to worship random charismatic people. These folks then set up organised cults using donations from their followers, which in turn led to gangs being established around the cults and a mercenary class of people established to protect the cult leaders, while making the gangs also feel like they're part of something greater. Above the mercenaries, though, we have the Shepherds, a very small and select group of people who were chosen for their quick wits and ability to handle situations. They're basically hired assassins acting as secret police on behalf of the cult leaders. If someone starts trying to pull believers from their turf, the Shepherds will be sent down to deal with it. And in this film, our main character is Dakota, a shepherd who's working on behalf of one of the cults on a more hush-hush range of missions. He's less of a peacekeeper and more of a silencer. Dakota has recently lost his wife and kid, who were both murdered under mysterious circumstances, and the film basically plays out like some kind of neo-noir throwback picture, with Dakota constantly narrating over the film's events in a style similar to the old 50s film noir pictures. Anyway, the cult give Dakota his latest assignment. He's to silence a woman who's causing trouble for the church. But when Dakota goes to do the job, he finds out that she has a kid, and the pain of his dead wife and kids stops him from pulling the trigger. Instead, Dakota rescues the pair from some other assassins who show up, and the three of them get away in an escape car, with the other mercenaries and assassins who were sent by the other churches hot on his tail. That's basically the first 20 minutes of this thing, and the rest of the movie is just an ultra-aggressive assault of footage that basically consists of Dakota getting to know his hostages and softening to them, which in turn opens his mind to the possibility that the cult leaders aren't all they're cracked up to be, intercut with either random and pointless sex scenes or the occasional low-speed car chase or shootout. All building to probably the most generic confrontation scene that I've sat through in a long time. In this incoherent and rambly mess of a movie, will Dakota something something? Will the cult leaders something something something? And something something? You better something something something, buddy boy. Something something yada yada yada, the shepherd. And I wish I could be more analytical on this one, honestly, I really do, but the reality is this thing feels like it was written by someone who caught odds and ends of The Warriors, Blade Runner and Escape from New York and decided to do an automatic writing experiment that went awry. For starters, while the broad plot of this film is clear, Assassin has a change of heart on his target and saves them, leading to the group being hunted down while said assassin learns his employers aren't exactly clean, somehow this film has nearly completely managed to build a 90-minute feature around that without any kind of subplots, deeper meanings, nuance, detail, anything. Literally, we get 20 minutes of narrator-led setup that leads us up to the assassination attempt, and then it's just sex scenes, shootouts, and Dakota seemingly sharing video footage of his murdered family with anyone who'll pay attention to him for longer than 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll slightly exaggerate when I say a film has more shootouts than it does plot development, but here, I'm completely serious. If there aren't people shooting at each other, there's people having sex, and if there isn't that, then it just cuts back to the cult leaders who, in very overcomplicated, flowery and pointless dialogue scenes, pontificate about how they're going to keep their syndicates afloat. This is the cinematic equivalent of a smooth brain. There's no thought, no complexity, no real plot. Just shoot the gun, do the sex, run away. That's it. Even the moments where the film tries to be a bit deeper with the cultists, it fails, because they don't even seem to grasp what depth in writing even really is. The pacing is pretty much non-existent because there's no plot points really to hang any kind of pacing onto. Stuff just happens in this movie for about 75% of the runtime, which is especially odd as the first act up to the 20-minute mark is actually kind of decently half-formed right up until the wheels come off. To break it down, we get easily 40 minutes of info dumping that's been compressed into 20 incomprehensible minutes. Then we have about 40 to 50 minutes of running around in such a manner that you could swap any of these scenes around into any order within that 50-minute window, and it would neither change the plot nor cause any continuity issues. Followed by a 10-minute finale in which there's a confrontation with the cult leaders that ends exactly as you think it would, followed by a plot twist finale that you'll spot a million miles away because they keep hardcore hinting at it on and off for most of the runtime. The 3-act structure is totally out of the window, our characters don't approach anything near development until 15 to 20 minutes off the end, and even then the change is minor and fairly inconsequential. It can't decide on what tone it wants to take, whether it wants to be a more moody and serious piece like The Matrix, or a bit lighter in tone like Demolition Man or Total Recall. Meaning it ends up trying to do both, but even in doing that it doesn't try to meld the two styles together. Both tones happen totally independently of one another on an almost scene-by-scene basis, which is beyond jarring and really just left me even more confused about exactly what the point of this all was. The characters are all super one-dimensional with no complexity or subtlety on show. What you see is what you get, whether it's Dakota being moody and angsty, the cultists being pious with a slimy streak, or the mercenaries basically being clone troopers and very little else. The total lack of anything deeper than what you see on the surface curses this film to just endless runaround scenes and dialogue that's so stiff and uninteresting you'd think it was an act of self-sabotage. It's an incoherent, uninteresting, poorly planned, badly plotted attempt at making a cheap and cheerful production that can't be asked to explore anything other than what's directly in front of it. And if this thing made it to a third draft, I'll eat my hat. The script was written by Nelu Giron. They have 9 writing credits, with the bulk of them being entries in the Star Hunter franchise. Though they did have some luck with TV writing for shows like Mutant X. This was, very unsurprisingly, their first ever writing credit, and it feels like they basically submitted the script on a cocktail napkin here. The film was directed by Peter Heyman, who has 2 directing credits to their name, this and Leslie Nielsen's stupid little golf video. He seems to have some experience in the world of novelty golf VHS, but this film was his last directing credit according to IMDb, and he hasn't been seen since, seemingly vanishing alongside the novelty golf video genre. And if you were hoping the direction was going to save the day here, you'd be mistaken, because what's here could at best be described as overly generic. You've got to imagine that realistically the crew for this film were likely shooting the other 3 films being produced in the warehouse at the time. They weren't trying to make a passion project here, they were trying to get shots in the can so that they could hit the bars as soon as possible from wrap. And it really shows here, as the sets are all overly dark, drab and murky. There's a huge lack of style cohesion here, with rundown shanty shacks being matched up to futuristic looking cars that are basically just mobility scooters with painted boxes put over them. The thing about shooting on distopic sets is that it's fine to make your base colours turd brown and smeary orange, but you do have to run a contrast alongside those colours. It can't all just be drab and soil coloured. Most directors will take it either one of 2 ways, utilising strong contrasting colours to help create a sense of distinct style, such as bright blues, reds, yellows, greens, something that contrasts the backdrop colours that can help with things like depth of field shots, or they work with the lighting, creating an almost expressionistic or neo-noir vision that help really sell the locations as something distinct and creative. Here, no. We get minimal colour usage outside of the base colours, the lighting is all very flat profile. This was basically shot for function over form, with director input probably stretching about as far as where the camera could be placed, and that's about it. That being said, I kind of understand why this thing looks so bland. If 3 other movies are being shot on your set while you're not around, it'd stand to reason that you couldn't really do anything too crazy with the on-set lighting or colouring. Basically, they were stuck with what they had at the startup and very little else. Direction of the cast is equally drab. I can believe that the director blocked the cast members appropriately to stop them falling out of shot. I can believe he told them their markers per scene, but I refuse to believe it went any further than that. Most of the shots are just our cast stood perfectly still in a location. At most, they may play around with a prop gun or grab something off a nearby table, but there's no animation or physical uniqueness brought to these roles. The deliveries are all flatter than an aardvark in a printing press. The Cine 2 suffers the same fate, drab compositions that don't push any kind of boundaries. The lack of colour absolutely kills this thing stone dead. And the one major flourish of colour that I can remember seeing prominently is used in arguably the worst possible way. Throughout the film, Dakota carries around with him a pair of thick glasses which, when worn, show him VR footage of him and his family living their best lives before the murders. It also occasionally shows adverts and naked news reporters, so, there's a plus. This is some very early low-budget CGI work, and it looks hideous, but they chose to put these events on a textured block colour backdrop, which, apart from it going strongly against the rest of the movie's visual tone, only exacerbated the CG elements which have awful amounts of compression and fringing on them. It's just dreadful. And I swear to God, this film was edited together by just dumping the shots into a Powerball machine, and whatever popped out they just cut into the final print. Sequences have two modes: incomprehensible, where due to the amount of cuts it feels like being in a washing machine filled with bricks on the spin cycle, as scenes hurtle through all the B-roll captured on set, and the actual scene takes at breakneck pace in a matter of minutes, creating a disorienting, unpleasant and incoherent effect, which only further causes frustrations to the film's storytelling ability. Or it's we had one take of this scene and no B-roll. This seems to be the case for most of the cultist scenes, where literally it'll just be a mid-wide or locked-off head and shoulder shot of them, effectively monologuing with no pauses or breaks. And these two types of sequence building sit side by side with each other in the edit, meaning you'll go from concussion cinema to feeling like you've just been thrown through a windscreen at 60 miles an hour when the scene suddenly grinds to an immediate halt because they didn't have any B-roll to keep the pacing of the sequences up to a decent speed. Performance-wise, it's a washout. Roddy Piper plays a cult leader here and he's absolutely wasted. Giving a frankly dire performance that reeks of a paycheck gig, he basically wanders around in priest robes saying nothing of relevance, dipping in and out periodically across the runtime. He gets top billing here. His name's on the film's poster. Hell comes to Frogtown, this ain't. C. Thomas Howell here plays our lead anti-hero Dakota, and honestly, in my opinion, he gives it a good go, but I feel it's a miscast. I think they were trying to play on the neo-noir vibe here, giving him a trench coat and a most heinous goatee, but realistically, he just comes across as a bit weedy and dorky looking in this. He's less tormented hero and more nerdy kid in a trench coat you'd catch dirtying up the pages of the graphic novel section of a Barnes & Noble. I sincerely believe he tried his best here, which I will give him credit for, but he isn't really that lively on set. He doesn't bring leading man energy to the role, and I really struggled to engage with the character, honestly. Oh yeah, and David Carradine's in this, playing a character called Ventriloquist, who seemingly is just a guy with a puppet in a wig and a dress, who seems to also have some sway over the mercenaries and how they operate, but being honest, I'm fucked if I know what he's even in this movie for, as he spends most of the time either in a bar set drinking or in a bed drinking, and to keep it short, so as not to pick anyone out specifically, the rest of the cast are worse than the above. So yeah, as you can imagine, I was thrilled to find that out. And finally, the soundtrack. And you know what? It's probably the best thing about this movie. It's not great. Oh no, not at all. But it's generic, fits the tone and budget of the film at hand, and is used effectively when it is used. It's all synthy sounding, it kind of dances the line between synthy action stings and more science fiction oriented tracks. I didn't hate it, but when the best thing I can say about your movie is the sets aren't half bad and the music didn't make me want to die, well, I think your film's gonna have some major issues to iron out. The Shepherd was released on VHS in the UK in 1998 by Third Millennium Distribution. As far as I can see, it was a big box rental exclusive and didn't get a home video release until Prism Leisure released it. At first on its own in 2001 on DVD, before bundling it into at least 2 or 3 multi-film offerings across 2002 and 2003. Extras are non-existent, this was a budget release, so interactive menus and animated chapter selection is about as good as it's gonna get, and given this film is now over 20 years old, I have got to say that it is looking rough. Not only are we dealing with a 360p image here, but that picture quality has been compressed to within an inch of its life. It's chronically pixelated and it looks like the opening and closing titles have either been remade for the home video release or have been compressed even further than the main feature, as you can literally see the artifacting around the JPEG images they've saved the titles as. In either case, this was the last time the film was seen. It hasn't had a Blu-ray release at the time of writing, and honestly, I kind of understand why. The Shepherd is, in my opinion, one of the rare instances of a total failure on not just a producer, director or writer to produce a coherent production, but on a whole production team. Almost nothing here works for me. The script is rambling and vague, the direction is flat and uninspiring, the cine is dire, the performances are phoned in and feel out of place, and the scoring is overly generic. Any one of these could derail a production in the wrong hands, so to see so many wrong elements get put into the hands of, in my opinion, the wrong people to produce a result that's just so incoherently unstable, well, it's actually kind of impressive in a comedy of errors kind of way. The Shepherd isn't even so bad as to have entertainment value. It's so bad that it just ends up being frustrating. I could maybe just about envision a group of friends having some beers and ripping this one a new one, but it would very much have to be the right kind of people and the right kind of drunk. As a sober solo viewing, I came away confused, annoyed, and firmly switched off from this work. I won't watch it again, and I don't think you should either.